გამარჯობა მეგობრებო, საინტერესო სტუმრით შემოვდივარ და წინადადებით, რომ ისეთ კაცს უნდა მოусმინოთ დღეს, რომელსაც საქართველოს რაგბიზე აქვს უამრავი რამე სათქმელი და ისე გამოვიდა, რომ ბევრი აქვს გაკეთებული და ცოტა ნალაპარაკები და აი ახლა ეგ უნდა დავაბალანსოთ, ბევრი უნდა ვალაპარაკოთ და გავიგოთ რაღაცა შევეცდებით ყოველ შემთხვევაში, რომ ამ საუბარში რაღაცეებს ავხადოთ ფარდა და რაღაცეები უფრო ნათელი გახდეს ქართული რაგბის უახლესი ისტორიიდან. ბევრს აღარ გავაგზავნებ, წარმოგიდგენთ Milton Haig, საქართველოს ნაკრების ყოფილი მთავარი მწვრთნელი და გადავედი ახლა ინგლისურზე. სხვა გზა არ არის. Welcome back to Georgia. Nice to see you again.
Madlova.
Yeah, it's been a long it's 5 years that
5 years,
you haven't been here.
Yeah.
So, first of all, start with the reason of your coming back. Did you miss us, or maybe you missed the Georgian wine, or maybe the traffic in Tbilisi?
Not the traffic. No, not the traffic. But I do, most of my work these days is for World Rugby. Mm-hmm. So part of my World Rugby portfolio is the Tongan men's team and the Tongan women's team. Okay. So I work with them periodically through the year. And they wanted me to come up and help them during this northern tour. So originally I was supposed to be at first 2 weeks, which was Romania and USA, and I couldn't be there for the first week because I had another commitment in New Zealand, coaching the New Zealand Barbarians. And then so I said, well, I can do the last 2 weeks, which included Georgia. So I was very pleased about that.
So you still coach?
Yeah, no, I mainly most of my stuff is consulting, but whenever needed, I'll still coach, and I still like to get my hands dirty every now and then.
That's what I was going to ask you. That's what I asked to Levan. Don't you miss coaching?
Yeah, I think you always miss it, but there's like again, I've done a fair bit of it in my lifetime now, and so one of the things I get a lot of pleasure from is giving all my knowledge in my head to other coaches, and then not just the coaches, but helping the whole program, the vertical really, get alignment so that teams and unions can be better functioning and get better performance out of their players.
Yeah, let's talk about your job a little bit more. What does it include to consult? Where, in which areas do you mostly
everything
interrupt?
Everything, really.
Structure of the union,
or structure of
the team?
Yeah, no, structure of the union, how we can, it's mainly towards high performance really, because that's my job as a high performance consultant for World Rugby, but it really, when you look at any kind of union and its performance, generally you need to look at the infrastructure first, resource levels, and then the quality of the people that work within the infrastructure. And then you, if you get that right, then the rest of it's quite easy, because again, selecting the right players, selecting the right coaches, it then allows you to get reasonable performance on the field. So, but if you don't have the infrastructure to be able to support all of that, then it's very, very difficult to actually get performance on the field.
What are the challenges for Tonga in that concern, and what are the similar challenges for Georgia and Tonga for tier 2 nations, let's say?
Yeah, well, to answer that last question, Richard has already said this. Richard Cockrell has said it a number of times, and to be fair, we were saying it even 12 years ago, that Georgia, like all other tier 2s, need to be playing high-level games more and more during one calendar year. So playing 1 or 2 matches is just not good enough. If you really want to compete at a high level at a World Cup, then you need to be playing more than that each year. That's logical, right? So we all share that problem, whether you're a tier 2 or tier 3. The other challenges, obviously now, is funding. The game in a lot of places is not returning any investment in terms of the monetary value to the amount that they're spending on teams and making their teams competitive in international rugby. So the issue that you've got now in a lot of countries like Tonga is, where do we get our funding from? So we have funding from World Rugby, we have funding from the government, which is obviously limited, and then we have funding from sponsorship, and we have funding from gate takings. Now, if you don't play many games in Tonga, you don't really have any gates. So
you mean by gate? You mean the
ticket sales, right? So again, when you look at all of those revenue streams, everything's getting shorter and everything's getting tighter. So to actually fund the game where it probably should be, because expenses aren't getting any cheaper, to send a team around the world is even more expensive than it used to be. To host them in the hotels and to have the proper resource is getting more expensive. So declining revenue, increasing funds, any kind of business model, it's not sustainable. So
there are plenty of Tongan born or like Tongan players who play outside and who play in national teams of other countries. Do they somehow support their country? No. Do they?
Not that I know of, but you would. That
maybe
would be very
so.
rare.
I don't mean financially, because there are not so much money in rugby, but maybe somehow to push their case forward, to arrange the games maybe or something.
Oh, absolutely. I would think
make
that
camps.
If there was, certainly there are opportunities where Tongan heritage players who don't represent Tonga, maybe represent other countries, are helping in the background with exactly what you're talking about, especially training venues if we're on tour, even just little things like making sure logistically there's a clear plan once we get in country. So they do help with that, absolutely. And whether it's known or not, it's just very much sort of in behind the scenes. So, but yeah, again, any kind of help that teams like Tonga or any of the Pacific teams can get is always going to help.
Let's go back to the days where you were assigned as a head coach of Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Why was this offer interesting for you? And what were your expectations and what was the reality? The shocking reality, I would say. Or was it shocking at all?
So one of the main things is that at the time I was conversing with New Zealand Rugby about Super Rugby and a job in Super Rugby.
You were with Chiefs before,
right?
right?
Yeah, Chiefs development. So effectively moving up into a top level Super Rugby. And then after the 2011 World Cup in New Zealand, the Georgian Rugby Union, Georgian Team, he approached New Zealand Rugby about recommending a New Zealand coach. So at this same time that we were having these discussions about Super Rugby, they came to me and said, there's an opportunity to go to Georgia, would you be interested? Georgia, USA, as everybody does, you know what I mean, sometimes. So looked it up. I'd actually watched the Georgian team play in the 2011 World Cup, and I was very impressed, obviously, by their forwards and in particular, obviously, Mamuka. So did a little bit of homework, went home, asked the boss, said, what do you think? Our daughter was a competitive gymnast at the time, and so my wife was pretty keen on getting our oldest daughter over to Eastern Europe to train with Eastern European techniques and
that's not the best place to train gymnastics
in
the world.
So it was like a bit of a twofold decision, really, and obviously, it was an opportunity to coach at an international level. So, we thought as a family. My wife said, "Let's take the kids and let's go and have an experience, see what it's like." So that was one of the main things I was happy about, is that we all moved here. Yeah, my wife and my two children. So because I know many people have gone in and gone out, and when I told the Georgian Union that I was moving there with my family, they were a little bit surprised because nobody had done that before. But I always said that if I was going to be the national coach, I had to be living in the country, on the ground, because when your performance is not great, you need to feel that from the public, and you need to take responsibility for that. Just like when you have success, you can also enjoy that
it
as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think if you go in and out of the country after campaigns and come in before campaign, you're not quite really attached to the community and the people that support the game, and that was really important for me to do that. So so we decided that we would come here and live, and 8 years it was. My family still, they're very jealous of me at the moment because I'm here and they're not. I get to travel a few places around the world these days, and this is the only place that they've said we're really disappointed we're not coming with you this time. So,
What they fell in love with the most, and you too, of course.
Obviously the support we got, the love that the Georgian people gave our family, the fact that obviously we made some very, very good friends here. Our girls were at a really big development stage of their life, and they had just had such a wonderful time here, and all their memories, probably apart from the Jordan traffic, is always, it's positive. They have no bad memory of living in this country for 8 years. And so obviously the oldest daughter, Molly, she spoke Georgian reasonably fluently. And
I remember she was quite good.
Yeah. So no accent because she just learnt it from her coaches at gym and her fellow athletes. And so so that was, it was very good. And then obviously, the rugby union and the players, were awesome. And, again, we just became one big family, really. So we were very, very lucky, very, very lucky.
Well, each stage of life teaches us something. It gets us better, probably, or more wise. What did Georgia give you in these 8 years?
I think I'd never lived in a country of this culture, really, and especially one of the things that always surprised me was the deep rooted belief in religion in this country. How it was the way that the Georgian family hierarchy is set up. Sometimes 3 generations in one house. It's very, very much like New Zealand in terms of our Māori culture, which is my heritage, and Pacifica culture, whether it's Fijian, Samoan or Tongan. So there were really, really big similarities around that family and how family is really, really important, and having and eating together is very important on regular intervals during the week or during the month. So those things were very surprising for me, and then when I learnt the language, understanding that how we say our vowels in Māori, a, e, I, o, u, is exactly the same in Georgian. And so these similarities were like, wow, okay, this is more like being back at home, really, you know what I mean? And then the other part to that was the way that Georgians loved rugby or became to love rugby was just fascinating, you know what I mean? So those were the sorts of things, the culture, the experiencing the language. Obviously it's wine heritage, it's food heritage. We all loved that. So every single person in our family. Just in the history of the country was also very, very fascinating, because if you think about New Zealand, it's no more than 200 years old, not quite 200 years old, right? So very new country, whereas this country has, many, many, many decades of, not decades, but hundreds of years, thousands of years of history. Over 8,000 years they've been making wine. The first country in the world to start this, and I proudly tell that statistic to anybody who will listen to me. You know.
Yeah, it's so sad to have a history of 3,000 years and be still a post-Soviet country.
Yeah,
Yeah, we could have done better.
Yeah.
I remember your not first game because it wasn't very pleasant.
No,
but
in Madrid, no, that wasn't.
First big win against Samoa.
Yep, 2013.
13.
Yeah.
Which was not only big win for you, but it was, and for the team, but it was a generally big win for Georgia because after the big changes started to happen. I guess that's my view. That's how I see it. I don't know the insights, but but after that win, because Samoa was number 8 that moment in the rankings, as I remember, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. So what was the insight of this game?
Well, like any job, and like when you try to bring new training techniques and new knowledge and understanding of what I was used to back in New Zealand, and you transpose it into the Georgian rugby, it does take some time to set itself, you know what I mean, and become firm, like any kind of concrete, really. You know what I mean? You lay it, and then it takes time for it to get hard, right? So, like we had to do is sometimes you would go forward a step, and then sometimes back 2 steps, and then forward a step, and you know, it's that old adage, sometimes you have to take a step backwards to go forwards. But ultimately we got around to 2013 November series. Remember we beat Canada the first game, I'm pretty sure. We lost to America out at Rustavi, last minute penalty.
That was a stroke for half of the stadium.
Yeah, poor New Zealand ref, he was useless. Gave a penalty that should have been ours and gave it to America, and they, to be fair to the young guy, he kicked it from about 48 metres out from the side. And
that was a moment when we thought that the game was over and kicked it out.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, we did. Yeah, and they had a line out and then went over to the far side, came back, the penalty got given, and then that was it, really. So you know, obviously some poor mismanagement from us, but ultimately came to that last game. To be fair, it was my contract was 2 years plus 2 years, and obviously, you know, the union were looking at whether they should keep me, you know, and whether that's right or not, I'm not sure. But ultimately, I knew the Samoan game was going to be crucial if I wanted to keep my job. So, but it's like anything, when you're under that sort of pressure, everything becomes a real crystal clear, you know what I mean? And so, and unfortunately, I knew a lot of the Samoan players because I coached a lot of them in New Zealand, and I knew how they would approach us. I knew they'd take us a little bit lightly. And
really? They
yeah, you know, as you said, they were 8 in the world, and I think we may have been 13 or 14. I think
maybe even
mean?
lower.
Maybe
I don't remember exactly.
But you know, like again, they were 8 in the world. They had some very, very good players. They'd had some success at beating Australia, and you know, and so good coaches. So I just sort of knew that how they would take us, and I knew they'd take us a little bit lightly, and it was the last game for them. So they were just missing home, and I knew they just wanted to get rid of us and go home, really. So, and the other part to that I got told about during the week, that this game was going to be on St. George's Day, which it was. So, you know, I used the St. George Day battle as a bit of a pre-team talk, and it was fascinating because players came up to me and said, "We did not know that you knew about that." So when we were at Shevardini, before we got on the bus, I just told them about that battle and how you know, Georgians who had no numbers, who were outnumbered by 10 to 1, 30 to 1, ended up winning a historical victory that has been told about for all these thousands of years. So why wouldn't we do that? You know, here's a team that we're going to play. They think they're going to win. They're ranked much higher than us, and so we're going to go out there and we're going to be warriors, and we're going to win this battle. So again, not just my idea, because I had a friend who planted it during the week in my head, And
Georgian friend?
Yes, Georgian friend, and I just thought it was fascinating. I thought, okay, right. So I read up about it and just thought, man, I could use this. I could use this. And so again, the players were very, very motivated by the time they hit the pitch. You know what I mean? We had a couple of technical things that we wanted to do. Just make sure, tackler in the ruck and nobody else. Everybody on your feet, and just stay on your feet. So that if they come at us, we'll just keep tackling them. And that's when it worked for us. So.
At what point you thought that this match is winnable?
Oh, I can't remember the score. I think it was something like 13-9 or something like that. I can't quite remember, but no, I wasn't sure about it until we actually finished the game. It was quite emotional because I knew I was under pressure about keeping my job, and my wife knew it as well. I just said to her, "Yeah, you know what I mean." And I remember going down, and where the coaches' boxes at the stadium, and then down, and they were her and my family and some friends were standing on the right hand side, and I saw them as I was coming down the stairs, and we had a big kiss and a cuddle, and maybe a little tear. But so we were very, very happy about that, and then afterwards we knew that
we all were very happy.
Yeah, we the players was just ecstatic because it was a big victory for us.
It
really.
was.
Yeah.
It was absolutely. There are key games in my view of the history of Georgian rugby. There are key games that really changed the direction to the better way.
Yeah.
There are some games that we lost, but they did so, and they. Like I remember the 2007 Ireland game at the World Cup.
Yes, at the World Cup.
It was a loss, but it was a big thing.
Yep.
And that was, thanks God, victory.
Yeah.
Which changed things quite seriously.
Yeah. And I think what happened out of that victory is it cemented the fact that yes, we need to give this guy a bit more time and we need to trust what he's doing. And I think that was the one thing that changed from the union's perspective, is that they trusted what I was doing.
So what were you doing?
Well,
what was the final picture, let's say, out of these resources and this material that you had? Maybe not the best, not the most skilled. We'll compare to where you were coming from.
Absolutely.
With a big heart, probably, with good physicality. Yeah. What were you building? Let's see the picture of where were you going.
Well, I mean, even before I landed in Georgia in 2012, I knew what we had to do is we had to make ourselves a bit more skillful. We needed to be able to catch pass better. We needed to be able to understand how to relieve pressure when we were under pressure. We needed to be able to manage the game better from our key drivers, which is our 9s and our 10s and our fullback. Even our midfielders have a role to play in that. And then what we also had to do is just make sure that our strengths kept being our strengths, but build different parts. Like if you were thinking about building a house, your foundations are key. So your ability to tackle, your ability for line-outs, your ability to scrum. So scrum, line-out, we never have an issue with. Our ability to tackle, always good. Okay, sometimes we made poor decisions, but again, nobody ever doubted our physicality. But so, as you earlier alluded to, it's about being able to use our skills a little bit better to be able to then think more tactically about when to put pressure on and when to relieve our pressure. So a more rounded understanding of the game, which people like me, we've been doing it ever since we were 4 years of age, learning all of that. And because rugby is, only a game even now is only 60 years old. The Georgian Rugby Union is only 60 years old now. 1964, the year I was born. It was when it first formed, right? So the game, if you think about that in many respects, is still very, very young in this country. So the understanding of the game is still very young because in this country people only knew what they knew. You know what I mean, in terms of how the game should be played.
Yeah, and it's not football. It's not that simple in a good way.
Yeah.
It's not that simple to play because it's a complicated game, and you need generations to get it into the nation, the knowledge of it, the taste of it.
And you see it now. You see it now, even in 5 years since I've been not being here. Those younger players, I saw it even when I was here from these young 14-year-olds. All of a sudden they could catch pass, they could step, they could run. And then you started seeing these kids like Niniashvili coming through and you go, oof, okay, good. You know, and some of these boys were coming from villages. It was like fascinating for me to but because, you know, somebody had built a field and there were lights and, you know, it was like, where are you getting all these kids from? And they said, well, the lights are on at night time and these kids are just coming down. Yeah. And it was just like, oh, well, yeah, good. So, you know, and then the more people you get involved in the game at a younger age, the longer they can develop their skill sets, the better rugby players they become. And then all of a sudden, you know, they're competing at, you know, the World Rugby Under-20 competition. You know, we've been there since 2015. We are probably the only, what we would call second-tier nation, who's ever kept their track record since 2015. I don't think there's anybody else who are considered Tier 2, who their under-20s have competed in every single competition since 2015.
That's the year that is considered to be the golden age of Georgian rugby, especially with the scrum. There was a good performance at the World Cup, 2 wins, which is still unreachable for us, 2 wins. But the main thing is that, the scrum was, everybody recalls that scrum, that the legendary scrum who really pushed everybody, smashed everybody.
Yeah.
What was special about that scrum? It was the collection of very talented and very good individuals, or there was something more?
No, I mean, ultimately it's always about the individual, but if you remember, we had a French scrum coach, forwards coach at that time, called Didier Bess, and absolute magician, with obviously not correcting big things, but the small detail that gave us even more power. Even like leg position, height,
bind, probably.
Yeah, and just, you know, the scrum is a very, very complicated piece of art.
Mm-hmm.
It is a very, very complicated piece of art, and we were lucky because we had people who had power, people who had played a lot of rugby in France, scrums is very, very important, not just to the psyche, but to how they build pressure and get penalties and stuff like that. So we had some boys who were really, obviously, you know, Nariashvili, Zudakashvili, you know, these guys were playing for top clubs. You know, so we were lucky in that aspect that we had good material to use, and then Didier, I just thought Didier did a great job in just building those final touches to give us even more power. But then, you know, like 2015 World Cup, again, I tell the story to the Tongans in terms of the way that we prepared as opposed to the way that they prepared.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that game too, so...
Yeah, I mean, look...
Finish with the scrum.
Yeah. So, you know, again, we had power. The scrum has always been psychologically a big weapon for the Georgians because it fits to our psyche, right? You know, and so then, you know, we always knew that if we could, you don't look to do it every time, but whenever there's a pressure time that we can put them under pressure, then that's when we should use it. You know what I mean?
Some people subscribe to the opinion that very strong scrum kind of served us a bad service because we were too much depending on the good scrum, and if one day it wouldn't work, then we would be in problems, which quite, to be honest, happened at some point. But when Nariashvili was sitting there where you sit now, and I asked him the same question, we never told anyone not to play. The good scrum doesn't bother anything, he said. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But our tactics at some point went too much really scrum oriented. Do you agree to that, or maybe you have some?
No,
other
I
opinion?
don't. I think there's always a transition on how teams form, right? Because again, depending on who you have in your team and your personnel, sometimes this is the way we should play. Because remember, as I said to you at the beginning, our strengths were our strengths, making sure our strengths keep being our strengths, but working on the things we need to work on constantly, right? And at that time of the period of our time in this team, that was one of our strengths. Our line out, our maul, our scrum was one of our main strengths. And so when you get to a World Cup, as South Africa do every single World Cup year, they just go back to their strengths.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's, the 3 years before we were trying to expand our game, but then I just realised that, okay, we're better at it, but when we go to a World Cup to win 2 games, we need to be really good at what are our strengths, traditional strengths, which is our line-out maul, which is our scrum, and we need to use that as much as we possibly could.
So one of those 2 games was matched symbolically with Tonga. So what was planned for that game? If you could.
Well, as I said to the Tongans, I knew that we would prepare better than them. I knew their preparation, and I knew how they would take their preparation. So
would they take their preparation more lightly?
Well,
than
no,
us?
they don't train as hard as we were going to train, and I knew that. You know what I mean? So that was the whole story, the start of the story for this book.
But we lost to Tonga a year before.
In 2014.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here in Tbilisi.
I said to the president after that game, I'm not worried about that. And he went, why? And I said, because they won't even next year when we get them at World Cup, because we already knew that we had them.
Yeah, we had.
I knew that they wouldn't think about us. So I said, that's going to actually work for us. So let's go back to the training camps. I just told the boys, this is what they're doing, this is what we're doing. So by the time we get to, if you ever play Tonga in a World Cup, you never want to play them last, because they get better as the tournament goes on. Always. If you're going to play Tonga, you always want them first, and we've got them first.
We were lucky with that.
Yeah. So our preparation is going to be absolutely key, so that by the time we get them, we're already a high level. We know that they won't be, and that'll give us our best chance. And that's all we talked about for 3 months. We just talked about every time they were thinking about giving up on the field and the running and the training and the hard yards they were doing, I just kept on yelling out, Tonga, we're preparing better than them. We will be fitter than them. This is how we're going to win the game.
So now your job is to improve that Tonga would practice work better than us.
No, that's not. Yeah. Didn't work last night, but look, in the long run, if we go back to that 2015, afterwards, I knew many players because again I'd coached them in New Zealand, and they came to me and said, we weren't even thinking about you. And I said, I knew you wouldn't be thinking about us. You know what I mean? They had their eye on Argentina and beating Argentina. So I knew that that's what they would think. And I knew that with that, not arrogance, but that, underestimation, we would have a good chance. Now, I think the stats, if I'm correct, were around about 36% possession, about 31% territory is what we had. We made 227 tackles that day, I'm pretty sure. And I don't think anybody had made that many games tackles at a World Cup game and won it. And we ended up winning it. And it was interesting because we collected into the changing room after the game, and I said to them, right, how do you feel fitness-wise? Could you play more minutes? And they said, we could play another 30 minutes easy. And I said, that's because of the training that you've just done over the last 3 months. There's your reward. You know what I mean? So, again, logical, made sense, we got the result. So,
before we move to the next World Cup, we have a partner here, TBC Bank, which you probably know. Yeah, and we have a simple questions with simple answers, explaining some rules. Today, TBC's question will be, in which case the penalty try is awarded. Simple, short answer.
Whenever there's foul play in the act of scoring a try, whether there's deliberate knock-on in the act of scoring a try, or the possibility of scoring a try. And what's the other one?
Let's say generally, it's a case when without the fall, the try would be scored probably, right?
Yes, exactly.
Without
a foul, yeah. Without a foul, basically, yeah. A try would be scored. In the likelihood, if that event didn't happen, there would be a try scored. That's generally when they will award a penalty try, like last night.
Yeah,
which I thought was a little tough.
you could argue about that, if the pass was exactly going to Davidson's hand or not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, TBC.
The next World Cup, 2019. I remember very well that at the preparation process, you were saying quite often that our team is physically I don't remember exactly the percentage, is better than ever before. Probably you were looking at the numbers, and that gave you the possibility to say it.
Yeah.
But something anyway
didn't quite click.
Yeah.
It was interesting because we thought we would have a really good chance. I mean, again, we started getting ahead. Maybe we were a bit like Tonga. We started getting ahead of ourselves. We honestly thought that we had a good chance against Wales. Remember, previously, I think 17, we'd got really close to Wales at Millennium Stadium. We knew we could win against Uruguay, but we always thought that if we won against Wales and Uruguay, automatically we were qualified, and then we would sink everything that we had into Fiji. So that was sort of the plan, and to be honest, losing to Wales sort of deflated us a little bit. You know what I mean? It sort of knocked us off our course. Not just the players, but certainly us as coaches. And the other part to that is we just did not perform very well against Wales, and that was probably the most disappointing thing. They'd done their homework on us. They knew which channels to run down. They really highlighted the seam of our line out with Tito at the first defender and the back of our line out. So Warren Gatlin had done a great job, and so it sort of knocked us off course a little bit. We managed to regather our senses, but we had to then strategically reform another plan in terms of. Obviously Uruguay was always planned. We knew what we had to do there, and then then we needed to reset our course to make sure that we could win against obviously Fiji. For Fiji, that first half was reasonably tight. The weather started raining in the second half, and we thought this is going to suit us absolutely. Right, let's just make sure we get it down, and then let's create scrums and mauls and take them into those dark places, as they call them. But the one thing that I'd noticed with Fiji previously, the last couple of years, is their scrum had got way better.
Absolutely.
They were and talking to their scrum coach 2 years previously, he'd found some young boys who were really strong, that liked to scrum, and the guy that was Alan that was coaching the scrum, he was an old guy from New Zealand, and he was quite smart. So he'd built their scrum up really, really well, and it gave us a bit of a challenge.
Yeah,
it really did.
And they've been good ever since.
Yep.
In scrum.
Yep. They've got these Fijian boys now who that's what they want to be. They want to be props. Yeah. So and they're naturally strong anyway. So now their scrum's pretty good. So the weather came, we thought we had a chance, but then the other thing that you can never account for with the Fijians is that when they start playing their game, they become very, very difficult to defend. And Nakarawa just started offloading, everything they started just out of their hands over the top, and it just kept sticking for them. And it was sort of like we were sitting in the coach's box going, well, how do you defend that?
Yeah, well, when the momentum is there, it's over.
Yeah.
For everybody, I guess.
Yeah, for anybody that plays them. If they start playing like that, they can beat anybody, you know what I mean? And so that second half, we just sat there and went, ugh, you know what I mean? So they took the game out of our hands, really, by some very, very skillful play in wet weather. And that was the other thing that was so impressive, is because the ball was wet, the ground was slippery, and they just kept on doing Fijian things, you know, that nobody else could do. And it was just like, oh, well, you can't defend that. So.
Yeah, okay. Well, usually this table is full of beers, but I have only 2 bottles left. Because I had some recordings here these recent days.
Yeah.
This is a bio beer done by my good friends.
Yep.
If it's not too early for you,
No.
I can offer
it's
you.
past 11 somewhere, so yeah, it's 11 o'clock, after 11 o'clock, so yes, let's...
I have only 2. The
Yeah.
one is the blonde ale, and the second is double IPA. This is more stronger.
the blonde would do good for me.
The immediate happiness. And
Yeah.
This is more
Thank
tasteful.
you. That's awesome.
At the same time, I'd like to ask you, before we move that, we have a little rubric. It's called A Story of One Try. While I open this, you can think and then tell us some try of your life, more maybe.
Yeah.
There's
There's
ring some bells in the memory.
Yeah. Just 1 try or 2 tries?
Well, if you prefer 2,
I got 2. One is Christian Cullen, he's an All Black fullback.
I know that.
He scores against Australia at what used to be called Carisbrook in Dunedin, in the south of the South Island. And not a big guy, but his ability to beat people without losing any pace, his speed, his agility, phenomenal.
Now let's try and stop this man. Inside, outside again, slipped and dived over.
But I suppose the one that really stood out for me, because it was the start of a guy that became an absolute legend in the game, and that's John Olomu's try against England in the semi-final. Pretty sure it was the semi-final in 1995 in South Africa.
Yeah.
So he gets the ball, runs over Rory Underwood, not Rory or his brother, can't remember, one of the Underwoods at the wing, and then runs over Mike Catt at fullback, and then basically has somebody else, I think, and scores a try. But that was the birth of a phenomenon, really, in rugby, because nobody had ever seen somebody as that big, that powerful, that fast. And he was only 20 then.
And where were you at that moment of your life? What were you doing?
Where was I? No, I was in New Zealand at that stage. I'd just come back from Scotland, actually, playing and coaching in Scotland, and I was back in New Zealand when I was watching that. So
probably in the nation, the New Zealanders already knew who Lomu was, how big he was.
Yeah.
But the rest of the world?
Yeah, the rest of the world hadn't.
No?
I mean, no, rest of the world. This is when he was born, basically. You know, and he became famous in all over the world after that 1995 World Cup in South Africa. And the other thing about that was he was known in New Zealand, but everybody wasn't sure whether he was fit enough or fast enough to play at international level, because he was a number 8 all through his school.
Yep.
And all of a sudden he'd been thrown out onto the wing. And he'd only played wing maybe 2 years.
Whose idea was to bring?
The coach, Laurie Mains, the coach at the time, saw this kid at school. He made his debut for the All Blacks at maybe, I think he was 18 years something, and maybe 19. But he decided to put him on the wing because he was big, he was fast. So.
Well, talking about generally the players and the players' profile, for you as a coach, what kind of profiles a player should have that you considered him as a good one?
The first thing I always look at is their character, so them as a person. So that's the most important thing for me.
Where do you see the signs of a character?
His general behaviour, his, like his humility, his willingness to pick something up off the ground, his willingness to help others, his willingness to make himself better, constantly working on his own game, while at the same time helping others. So these are the sorts of things that if you build a team full of people with character, you generally will have a successful team. You might not win every game, but what will happen is they will all have the same type of philosophy and work ethic and understand many things that you can then keep working on. If he doesn't have character, even if he has talent, if he doesn't have character, we wouldn't be interested in.
Yeah, this is a game of characters. That's
and it is
sure.
For this game. This game was always built on character. Traditionally, hard-working people generally. This was the game that they loved.
And talking about, please enjoy it. Go waters.
Oh, shit. Okay. Over myself. Already been drinking.
Well, it's Georgia. You know where you are. It starts from the morning.
There is no time. Yeah, there is no.
Yeah, talking about just a little bit more, and I will let you go because I know you're in.
No problem. Yeah.
In a hurry a little bit. I try to understand now the modern game. I try to, and most of all, I try to understand where does it go. What is the direction of it? With so many rule changes, and the game became so physical.
Yep.
And these changes they tend to be done in like to improve the game flow, to make it faster, to make it quicker. Do you see the final point of it? Should it constantly be changing, or there is some point, the last station, where the game will go and stop changing, and it will be like, because if we take the soccer, the football, there will be no changes for ages.
Apart from the, what do they call
That's why
it, the VR or whatever it is, you know what I mean? But
yeah.
Apart from that, I know, and I struggle to comprehend sometimes the changes that they make. The one thing I would probably say in our game is, as long as we have people who get paid to sit around a table and talk about it, talk about the rules, I think you're always going to have changes because they're trying to justify, obviously, what they do. Whether it's actually making the game better or not, I'm not sure, because from my end, and obviously sitting at the coach's box and watching some of the interpretations of the rules, this is the biggest issue that we have, because each individual can interpret certain rules differently, and so the consistency of what we're getting seems to me to be a little bit up and down now, my personal view. And so we really need to have a look at those sorts of things. Speeding the game up to entertain the viewers and the people who come and watch, I've got no issues with that, no issues at all. But there are some key fundamentals for this game that have always been there. You know what I mean? The amount of people that play the game with the size of the field has never changed. 1,500 by 67 to 73 metres wide. That's never changed. 15 people either side.
What are the other constants that should remain the same?
Well, I think the team that's got the ball should have a little bit more leeway in terms of being able to create attacking rugby, right? But At all instances, if there is a tackle, it must be a fair contest to be able to get the ball back. Line out's exactly the same, scrums. So whenever there's contestable situations, we need to have a proper contest. Yeah. And that should never change, because that's the bit that makes us different from a whole lot of other sports. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you know what's incredible? That Richard was here, he's in English, he said that he doesn't like these changes very much, but the Southern Hemisphere coaches are asking for it. Now the Kiwi coach is here and he doesn't like it either. So who does this? Who changes those rules?
I'm not sure that the Southern Hemisphere likes the change of the rules. We would probably accuse that the people who make these rules are more Northern Hemisphere. You know what I mean?
I need to gather you all guys here together.
Yeah.
Just I need a bigger space.
So there's not many of us that sit on that panel that makes these rules, believe me. You know what I mean? So Southern Hemisphere I'm talking. But again, I think there's some the more work I'm been doing in this space in the last 2 years, the more I see from a training perspective, it's the old that now is becoming the new. And to be successful at this game, you still have to have, at international level, you still have to have really good set piece, scrum line out. Yeah. You have to be able to catch pass, basic fundamental of the game, always has been. You have to be able to catch pass really well. You have to make your one-on-one tackles, which has always been the same. And then the fourth thing is, when you have the ball, you have to be able to carry the ball well and clean the ball well. So we call it carry clean at rucks. So you get that right, you'll be reasonably successful. And in all the work that I've been doing and all the environments in the last 2 years that I've been in, I've come to the conclusion that those are the four key indicators for success. If you can do all these other things, and the reason I'm talking about this will come to light in a minute. So you can do all these other things that coaches we get so fascinated about. But if you do those four things really well, generally you're going to be reasonably successful. My point about mentioning this is rugby is a simple game complicated by other people. If you can keep your four basic things, make it contestable, make sure that scrums and lineouts are still part of rugby, because we don't want to be rugby league. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So and so that we keep the game that is there for a lot more people, right? And then if we can make sure that when we do have the ball, there's some ability for us to be able to create entertainment, right? So there's some key areas. I think if you keep the fundamentals right, I think the game will always be good. You know what I mean?
And who are these other people who try to complicate the game?
All these people who get paid to complicate it. And I'm including coaches as well, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, there's many people, but again, hopefully we don't lose what fundamentally is the game.
Oh, one thing I don't want to miss and let you go without asking this, because for us the Super Rugby has always been the Southern Hemisphere rugby lovers. Yeah. Super Rugby has always been a dream tournament, and to watch it and to enjoy it, I still do, and I still wait for the February to start. Yep. And but they say that, well, you can notice it on the stands, but that the public is somehow maybe losing an interest. I don't know, I'll just have versions. Losing an interest. Maybe the tickets are going prices going higher. Yep. Or maybe there is some other reason. Why is Super Rugby losing the interest of does it?
No. People going to grounds, absolutely. People going to grounds, absolutely. Because you can watch it every game on TV in your own lounge. Yeah. In front of you, once it gets to May, June, it's cold and wet. So why would you go there and, so everybody can watch it every single game right through the weekend from your own couch with your beer and your food. And
yeah, but it could never compare to the stadium.
No, absolutely it doesn't. Absolutely it doesn't. But we don't care anymore. This is the thing, is that it's easy for me to actually stay at home. It's also, because I pay, reasonable money for that subscription every month.
Okay.
Right? It's also expensive to go to a game. The tickets aren't cheap. If you want food, it's also expensive. If you want to buy beer, it's expensive. So cost of living all over the world, and in New Zealand, it's still the same. We are no different. People just don't have that discretionary money to be able to spend going to watch an event. And maybe once, maybe a year, if that, they may go to a game. It may be live and it may be a local game that is in my town. So watch my team. Not a Chiefs, not a Super Rugby team, but my NPC team.
NPC.
So I might go and do that because it's a little bit cheaper and I don't have to travel too far, right? So I think there's many indicators and reasons why we aren't seeing so many people at stadiums. The only team that sells the stadium out now these days is the All Blacks, and it's not even in every city. Generally in Auckland, always gets sold out because Auckland has a population of 2 million people.
Probably Wellington too.
Even Wellington this year, no, it didn't sell out at all.
Wow.
So again,
it's connected to money. It's that free will. That's simple.
Yeah, I think it's that a lot of it's connected to discretionary money that people have to spend. I think that's a big thing these days in New Zealand. But I also think the fact of the matter is that we can watch every single game live on TV in my own couch, and I think people have just got a little bit complacent about actually going. I might as well just watch it on TV.
Is it a concern in New Zealand to bring people to the stadium? Do they think about it? Do they work on it?
Have been for years.
And it
have been for years and still haven't found the formula, you know. The other part to that is now young men and women have lots of other things that they can do. They have jobs, they have cars, they have, basketball's very big in New Zealand. Football is very big in New Zealand now, you know what I mean? So the game doesn't have the same mantra as it used to be for all of New Zealand. Yes, absolutely, for a large part of the population, yes, but for a lot of others, no. They enjoy other sports and other things.
Yeah, I hope one day I will be able to get to that part of the world and see it.
Well, if you ever do, you make sure you contact me. So
absolutely, I will, because you're the only Kiwi I know.
Well, I can introduce you to some very nice ones. So,
Okay, thank you very much, Milton. It was really, indeed, a very interesting and fascinating conversation for me. I'm happy to see you so open and smiling, because back when you were a head coach, you had your responsibilities, you had loads. It was much. We had some interviews before. It was, I guess, 10 or 12 years ago, so we had a quite long interview. But I prefer that one, because that's how I imagine a conversation about rugby, with beer, with smile, with some philosophy in it. So thank you for that.
No. Well, thank you for the opportunity to come.
Thank you for coming.
And it's very nice to see you again. Very nice
for
to see
me
you again
too.
after all these years.
So I wish you a good luck in everything what you do or planning to do in your career or in personal life. Say hi to the family from me, and thank you for coming here.
ძალიან დიდი მადლობა.
თქვენ ძალიან დიდი მადლობა მეგობრებო, რომ გვიყურეთ. მე მგონი რომ ისი ამონეთ ჩემთან ერთად და რა ვიცი, ასეთი კარგი სტუმრები თუ კიდე მეყოლება, ყველაფერს გავაკეთებ, რომ მოვიტყუო ხოლმე აქამდე და რა ვიცი, რაღაცნაირად გაგაცნოთ თქვენს უფრო ახლოდ. მე მგონი რომ დღეს ჩვენ მილტონ ჰეიგის ახალი სახე დავინახეთ. მადლობა ყურადღებისთვის, კარგად ბრძანდებოდეთ.